Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Scott Luton and special guest host Rob Tiffany here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Rob, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm awake. It's snowing out my window right here. It's really coming down. I'm
Well,
good.
and it's really early your time, so I appreciate you joining, fighting all the caffeine and to join us here for today's live stream with a couple dear friends. And really quick, before we say hello to a few folks and tee up the episode, that picture behind you, we were talking about that
Yeah.
pre-show. That is a gorgeous shot. Where's that?
It's near Moab, Utah, and it's in a national park called Canyonlands. And this is particularly, it's called the Mesa Arch. And so when you get there to take your photo at dawn when the sun's coming up, you'll find out that there's all these professional photographers with tripods with their big cameras. And there you are with your phone looking like an idiot. So, hey, but it worked out. It worked out.
It worked out great. What a great shot. I'm jealous. And also
Thanks.
you're sharing with our global audience just how regularly early you get up. It's part of who Rob Tiffany is. But hey,
Oh,
on
such a
today's
morning person.
on today's show though, Rob, we're going to be talking big supply chain and manufacturing tech opportunities in 2023 and really beyond that, right? Hashtag BeyondNext, perhaps. We're also going to be discussing the digital divide and offering a really neat way that our listeners can join in the effort to bridge that chasm. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of good stuff we can do to help out.
So true, so true, and and we're called to do it, right? So it's
Yeah.
part of our responsibility. Before we bring in our two rock and roll guests we've got here today, folks, you're really going to enjoy. Let's say hello to a few folks out in the cheap seats, the skyboxes, out in the comments. We'll say Kwan is tuned in from via LinkedIn. Phil, also tuned in via LinkedIn. Great to see you, Phil. Of course, Catherine, the whole production team behind the scenes helping to make it happen. Also, big tip of the hat to Gail. Really appreciate all y'all's good work. Hey, Josh Goody's up your neck of the woods, Rob, up in
Yeah.
Seattle.
Hey,
Two
Josh.
inches. How about that? Two
Yeah.
inches in
It's
an
really
hour.
coming down. I'm on the east side, Josh.
Okay.
Yeah.
East side, west side. We'll have to get y'all together. As I mentioned, Gail from the beautiful Bay Area. Gail, hope this finds you well. Anurug via LinkedIn. Let us know where you're tuned in from. Great to have you here today. Of course, Sylvia Judy is with us from beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. Thankfully,
Mm,
no snow here. I'm with you, Sylvia. Okay, Rob, are you ready?
yeah.
We've got two
I'm ready.
outstanding guests. Are you ready?
Let's do this thing.
Buckled in, ready to go. Okay, so I want to introduce our guests and then we'll be swooshing them into the conversation. First up, we have Priya Wenzel, Global Vice President, Partner Ecosystem Success, focused on digital supply chains at SAP, and Vadi Narasimhamurthy, Global SAP Supply Chain Leader and Digital Supply Chain Networks Leader with Deloitte. Let's swoosh in Priya and Vadi. Hey, Priya, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Great to be here with you, Rob
You
and Buddy and Scott. Fantastic.
You as well. We've really enjoyed the pre-show conversations. Good morning, and Vadi, great to have you here.
Great to be here as well. It's exciting topic.
It is, and we got so much to get to. But we're going to start, Rob, Priya, and
Yeah.
Vadi, with a fun warm-up question. And Rob, we love talking about food around here, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Nonstop. So, the fun warm-up question here today: did you know that on December 20th, 1928, Harry Ramsden would open his first fish and chips restaurant in England? Right, and that's a bit of an infamous place to go get a good fish and chips. So speaking of that anniversary and cuisine in general, what is one of your favorite food dishes? And Priya, I want to start with you.
Well, Scott, I love cheese on everything. So, can you guess what my favorite dish is? Well, I'm going to make it easy. My favorite dish is cheese fondue. And growing up in Africa, having never tried this before, I will never forget the first time I had a cheese fondue in Germany over 20 years ago. And I have been hooked ever since then, trying different recipes of cheese fondues with making it with beer, with wine, different cheeses. But my all-time favorite is a classic Swiss cheese recipe made with a dry white wine, good Emmentaler and Gruyere cheeses, served with a sweet French baguette, potatoes, grapes, pickles. And I absolutely love that fondue is such a social meal, communal eating out of
Mm.
the same pot. So paired with good wine, good conversation, dinner can last for hours. My absolute favorite.
Oh, Priya. Rob, she's got all of us starving now, right?
We are starving big time. Oh my, that sounds so good, Priya. I'm ready for my
Right.
communal cheese.
Catherine says, Priya making us hungry. By the way, Ron Blackburn says, hey, Priya, from your ex-colleague at SAP. Great to
Yes.
have you here. And Letford tuned in from Zambia. Great to have you as well. Okay, so Vadi, Priya set the bar pretty high. So what's one of your favorite dishes, Vadi?
Yeah, that's a bar that's really high. Now, so she's amazing, amazing, and she definitely made me hungry. Now, I'd say, for me, growing up in India, anything spicy has always been the thing I'd go to. And so Indian food in generally is spicy, but for me, I'd say my all-time favorite is really Thai food. And so I love, a pad Thai with some tofu or some chicken, depending on the situation. But it's got to have that spice in it. And there's some really good, living in New York, some really good Thai restaurants that I'd say are just absolutely phenomenal. One of my favorite places to go to, and I'm a regular, I'd say, with Thai food.
Okay, man, I got to come visit you. You and Priya both. Rob and I are gonna make a road trip and come see you
Absolutely.
both. All right. So Rob, man, between Priya and Vadi, man, we're starving. What's one of your favorite go-tos?
I feel like it's a combination of both of them. If I put both of them together in my kitchen, but we were not in the Seattle area, but in Texas, where I grew up, it would be spicy and it would be based on cheese. Of course, this would be queso dip, right? And it's a communal thing because you're making it in a pot, and so how do you make great queso dip? And lots of restaurants try their best, but some of them fail. And so
Yeah.
I can imagine Scott and I going on a road trip actually just trying out queso dip everywhere and chips. So basically, a cheese that melts really well. I know the easy go-to for a lot of people is just throwing Velveeta in there because it really
Right.
melts. Then Rotel, put about a couple cans of Rotel in there. That's kind of your mixture of tomatoes and all that kind of stuff and some spices. You can choose to maybe put some spicy like chorizo in there or some other stuff, jalapenos. And then to make it spicier,
Yeah.
cayenne pepper to kick it
Oh,
up a
man.
notch. And so the way I think about it, like we're making it at home, let's say we're having a party, you have adults, but maybe there's some kids. I'll make it so spicy that the kids don't want to eat it, but the adults love it. So for your
More
next
for
party,
us.
keep that more for us. Exactly. So queso
go.
dip and chips and some salsa, and I'm good.
Oh, I
So it's
love
like
that.
fondue. It's like Mexican Texas fondue, right?
Oh. So I got to share a couple. We're getting lots of comments here in the audience. Sylvia says, we Germans do fondue right.
Yeah,
and
they do.
let's see here. Now, Salah maybe says, come to the cheese capital of the world, Plymouth, Wisconsin, home to Sargento cheese and Sartori cheese. So, Salah, we're gonna take you up on that. And finally, Alan, dear friend Alan, says, got to go with the Carolina Reaper, which is a famous hot pepper. So, Alan, that's quite a challenge. Okay, Rob, Priya, and Vada, y'all really have delivered here today on our fun warm-up question. But folks, got to get around to doing some work, right? We've got some big topics to talk about today. So as much as I hate to move from food, I love talking about global business, and especially with the three of y'all who really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on out in the market and working with a lot of the leading businesses out there. So with that said, Priya, I want to start by posing, what are some of your observations on what's going on out in the industry right now, Priya?
Well, thanks, Scott. Well, what we are still seeing across supply chains is disruption. I know we're all tired of talking about disruption, but it's the reality we've lived through, we are still living in, and we are in the age of disruptions. Trade wars, 100+ ships waiting to unload in Southern California. And look what's going on right now in this flu season. Pharmacy shelves emptying out, pharmaceutical companies struggling with raw material shortages. Well, just last month, getting ready for Thanksgiving, my oldest son on his way home from college, and him expecting a well-stocked fridge. And just my bad luck, my fridge breaks down. And my husband and I rush out. To about half a dozen stores
Right.
trying to find a fridge to fit my specific cabinet specs. And we got the same response from every store: supply chain issues, backlogs. We cannot confirm availability, manufacturers struggling to address product recalls. And believe it or not, our preferred brand, which I'm not going to mention, was 6 to 8 weeks out. And we ended up buying a competitive brand to our first choice. So we are seeing challenges on the supply side with sourcing of certain products. But on the other hand, we are also seeing demand destruction, which is going on because of interest rates and the economy showing signs of slowing down.
Mm.
So as you're seeing now, retail sector reports not looking good for this holiday season, not up to expectations, and retail sales have dropped significantly. So people are shifting priorities in how they spend, spending less on luxury goods this season and shifting spend to more towards necessities. So we are seeing disruption on both sides of the equation happening at the same time. So excess demand, unable to fulfill, and we are also seeing in some areas demand destructions with the impact of inflation.
Yeah.
And this dynamic is what is making supply chain issues even more challenging, right? Because companies are usually focused on solving one problem at a time. They have a distribution problem, so focusing on warehouse management, or they may have a demand problem and focus on forecasting, but solving one problem at a time.
Mm.
And this is not going to move the needle if these processes are not connected internally, externally. We're still going to see breakdowns across the supply chain.
Mm.
So we're seeing a shift towards interoperable solutions. So having to connect these processes, being able to tackle the problem end to end.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Priya, man, you have set quite the table. It's almost like we're going back to a beautiful cheese fondue dinner. You have set the table so beautifully. I'm going to move right along to Vadi and Rob. But really, before I do, on the front end of Priya's response there, I think a lot of us could relate as consumers, right? We went through a dishwasher shortage here in the Luton household. Our ice maker stopped working, couldn't find parts for that. Adrian says it took me 3 weeks to find a full-length standing height ironing board. Adrian, the struggle is real in recent years. And by the way, Leonard says, looking good, Rob. Tiffany. Hey, Leonard, great to have you here with us. All right, so Vadi, before I get to Rob, Vadi, what else would you add to what's going on out there in the industry right now?
So I'll start by echoing what Priya said around, supply chain disruptions being real, to a point where my 11-year-old and my 5-year-old even know the word supply chain. They understand it because my 5-year-old didn't get his toy for his birthday on time, and my 11-year-old, who's a big cubing guy, didn't get his cube, the 3x3 cube, on time because there was delays in shipping, and there was actually delays in actually getting the product out, all driven by shortages on the raw material side, transportation issues, driven by the global supply chain constraints that Priya was talking about. So it's not only real to organizations, it's real to individuals, and we're feeling it across the globe. And it's not a issue in a particular region, right? This is anyone anywhere living in the world today has felt those issues. We're probably in the biggest supply chain constrained world that we are in, that we've ever seen in our lives. So I'd say that if you use that as a background, the pandemic obviously did not help, and so that it created, in addition to the constraints from a supply chain standpoint, it created the need for organizations, I think, to be more resilient. The supply chains have always focused on lowering cost, improving service, improving quality, and not as much, I'd say, on flexibility and resiliency. And so now you have questions, an example of organizations thinking, how do I set up my manufacturing sites and my network in such a way that I can actually get product to my customers, even if I have shortages or even if I have transportation issues, vessels on right outside the port. Even if that happens, how do I make sure product comes to the door? So I would say there has been a shift in thinking from a supply chain standpoint within organizations that is driving the need for a focus on resiliency, driven by the constraints that Priya was talking about. And that has a wide variety of different implications. And the other part of it I'd also highlight is, people are actually getting serious about, how do we, save the planet? How do we leave a
Mm,
better planet for our children? And so that, from a sustainability standpoint, also is having implications on how supply chains need to operate. So I'd say there are, several factors coming together. You combine all of that with the geopolitical environment, the war in Ukraine, and the economic conditions that Priya you were alluding to. This is a confluence of just a whole host of seemingly unrelated things, but having an impact directly on the supply chain. So
yeah,
I just think there's now the good part about that is I think it creates opportunities. So organizations and individuals that think about what do we do about the current situation instead of, oh my God, I have a problem. I
right.
think get ahead of the curve, and that is something that we are seeing our clients do, is really morph the way they think about supply chain, really morph the way they think about leveraging technology to morph the supply chain, and that's paying dividends for those people that have taken the bull by the horns and run with it.
Vadi, so true in that last point, especially. I was just talking yesterday with the one and only Greg White, my partner in crime here at Supply Chain Now, and Kevin L. Jackson, about how there was very little future proofing done across global supply chains a couple of years ago, and now we've all learned the value of that. Rob, man, we are really starting. I told you these are two rock and roll stars. Rob, what
Yep.
were some of your thoughts here in terms of what's going on out there?
I got a lot of notes here. We're filling up the old moleskin. You know what? Great stuff. You raised the bar for sure. And you know what's funny? It's not funny. The average person doesn't know or isn't involved in trade wars and geopolitical stuff. They're just trying to live their lives. It's interesting when you talk about resiliency. A long, long time ago, companies jumped on board this whole just in time, built their supply chains perfection instead of carrying lots of inventory like they used to in the old days. They didn't want to have to carry inventory. And so everything was, and for a long time, it worked fine. As long as everything is smooth, manufacturing's happening, trucks, trains, ships, as long as that's all perfect, you
Right.
can do that just in time manufacturing and shipping and with your distributors. But as soon as there's a ripple, a problem, it goes through the whole supply chain and it affects everybody. And so I think people are potentially rethinking this built per perfection supply chain that we've had now for at least the last couple of decades. And so that's really interesting. I certainly feel that, I do a lot of stuff in the Internet of Things. And so devices, endpoints, sensors, things like that you use in the world that I work in, helping companies do their digital transformation, the backlog on trying to get devices and sensors is impacted. We've all heard about the chip shortage, and
Right.
people scratched their head when they said, why is the chip shortage affecting me getting a car? They had no idea how many chips are in cars. But the same thing is affecting anyone who's doing this Industry 4.0, digital transformation using IoT. It's hard to get devices. You go from a lead time of 3 weeks to them telling you it's going to be 45 weeks.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's tough. No doubt
Fun
about it. You guys
times.
raised some, great points from raised for sure.
Well,
Yeah, Rob,
one of
Rob, it's
Rob.
50, Rob, it's 52 and counting for me for waiting for my car.
Oh man.
Oh, wow.
So where I love how, I really love Rob, Priya, and Vadi, how we're approaching this conversation, not just as practitioners, but as consumers, right? Because we all are consumers and are feeling a lot of the pains and issues that all three of y'all have identified. One of my very bright daughters asked me, as it relates to the chip shortage for the automotive industry, she's like, Dad, why can't we just make cars like we used to and get around the whole chip issue? I'm like, you know what? Let's whiteboard that maybe. But regardless,
Yeah.
couple quick comments. Look here, John, going back to appliance issues, Rob, Priya, and Vadi. John says, our refrigerator died at Thanksgiving. The model that fit into our kitchen took a month to be delivered. Luckily in Maine, we can keep food on the front porch. T Squared, who holds down the Fort Force on YouTube, says, hey, this is a serious hard crack of reality check on the depth of supply chain disruption. Forward buying is hard to leverage, and shortage gaming is the on deck for today's business ATP. Good stuff there, T Squared, and great to have you back as always. Okay, so Rob, Priya, and Vadi, we're going to keep driving because we want to talk, and back to you, Priya, we want to talk about how you're seeing manufacturing and really supply chain leaders prepare for 2023 and beyond, that BeyondNext factor, especially from a technology standpoint. Priya, your thoughts?
Well, I was chatting with my good friend Mike Lackey, who you've had on the show, and we both agreed on that the big question in manufacturing will continue to be, what is my demand going to look like? And the main focus is on being responsive, right? Around a couple of areas, being agile. So it's still all about speed, being able to quickly respond to individualization of goods and services, looking at how do I increase production in one factory, but also how do I move production across my global factories to quickly meet demand. And also improving efficiency. So just think about spending $200,000 on a robot. How do I get the most out of it before I invest in another one? So what's the right level of investment? So maximizing resource utilization is going to continue to be a priority. And in addition, we're going to see smart technologies in play, more automation, increased usage of robots, machine learning for predictive manufacturing capabilities, and all of this aimed at improving efficiencies. And of course, as Vadi pointed out, running sustainably. This is a priority because consumers are determining where they place their loyalty, right? They expect climate-friendly products, and companies are going to be focusing more on safeguarding their brands and their reputation. And sustainability equals profitability. So sustainable manufacturing is a focus, reducing scrap, reducing product recalls, reducing waste and energy consumption, and big focus on worker safety. But all three areas depend, success in all three of these areas depend on intelligent data. So you will see companies are focusing more on leveraging advanced technologies like IoT. So collecting real-time data from machines and people, vehicles. So a focus on turning this raw data into actionable insights, process automation. And Scott, by the way, you can experience the smart manufacturing in action at the Smart Factory, which Deloitte and SAP have partnered on. It's a really great place. It's in Wichita.
Yeah.
And here is where you can reimagine how an intelligent enterprise should run.
I love that. I love Wichita. I spent 2 years in Wichita. We talk about that a lot. Greg White is from Wichita, so we're gonna make a trip back there, and we're gonna see that firsthand. Priya, we've heard a lot of good, great things about the Smart Factory. Before I go to Vadi, and Priya, man, you really brought it perspective by the truckload there. Rob, she mentioned a couple of your favorite things. Certainly IoT and leveraging IoT even more successfully across global supply chains. Your quick thoughts there, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. It can help out. The IoT is efficiency, right? And reducing waste. And it all goes hands in hand with sustainability. And Priya is absolutely right. And I think a lot of leaders in manufacturing and other businesses need to kind of let it sink into their head that sustainability does equal profitability. For the longest time, they felt like, oh, if I do this, it's not good for business. Priya hit it right on the money. We're reducing scrap. We're increasing worker safety. I think the word is reduce, reduce, reduce. Whenever the more energy you use to do anything, the more emissions you produce, right? Anything you can do to reduce those things. And so IoT gives you that precision knowledge, right? Just in time to take those actions on insights. So yeah, right on the money.
Good stuff there, Rob. And folks, by the way, listeners, if you want to get a background on Rob's incredible journey, maybe Amanda and Catherine and the gang can drop that episode, one of your appearances with us previously in the comments. Good stuff there, Rob and Priya. Okay, so Vadi, when we talk about, to your earlier point, you mentioned you can find lots of opportunity without being opportunistic in this environment for folks that want to think differently. So, Vadi, how are you seeing manufacturing supply chain leaders prepare for 2023 and beyond, especially again from that technology standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, Priya and Rob touched on a lot of items. I'd actually touch on the people angle. So if you think about manufacturing, traditionally it's always been about people on the shop floor, producing product for us or packaging items or things like that. Priya touched on the fact that we now have robots on the line now. Different industries are at different maturity curves. There's some are really advanced and some have a ways to go. But today it's about cobots. It's about how do robots and people collaboratively work together, and that would drive worker safety issues, improve worker safety problems that we've had in the past. To Priya's point, improve efficiency and throughput depending on the situation. So that's been a big change. Is this collaborative environment that people and organizations are moving towards? The second thing I'd say from a people perspective is analytics that allows people to make decisions more real time. Back to data collection that Rob mentioned around IoT. It's a great way to collect real time data, but having the insights and translating that data into information at people's hands to make real time decisions is something that is changing significantly in the manufacturing world for the positive. And I'd also say there's the other aspect is leveraging technology to figure out how people can do things more remotely. So in the past, now today you don't have, again, the pandemic accelerated that to a large degree, but today you don't have to have every single person be on the shop floor to get work done on the shop floor. Maintenance operators are good examples. How can I sit in a central control room and observe the asset, and in fact drive a predictive perspective of what the asset might do, and still have your AR and VR technologies drive how you think about potentially servicing the asset. So you don't need to have experienced maintenance engineers in every single remote plant in the world. You could have people at the plant support some activity, while some of the experienced maintenance engineers are in a centralized control tower of some sort to drive maintenance operations. So my point is, technology on the manufacturing floor has really transformed the way people approach it, and it's a good thing because people are now safer. People can focus on tasks that are actually really interesting and create value rather than have to do some of the mundane activities that people used to do in the past. So I think that's been, and lastly, I'd say globalization. So you could actually have facilities in remote parts of the world, and you could be in a totally different part of the world and still be able to execute actions that you potentially couldn't take. So the way companies source talent because of that has transformed dramatically and is transforming as we speak.
Oh man, Vadi. One of the things, Rob, I'll get your take here, but one of the things I want to definitely call out that Priya and Vadi both spoke to is, and hopefully this sticks, because last few years we have, as business leaders, we've really paid a lot more attention on protecting our workforce, making sure they're safe, they are taken care of, they are, we're engaging. I mean, that's unfortunately that should be a timeless value. But unfortunately, that's not been the case. So hopefully that will stick as we have really relearned the incredible priority and value of taking care of the human element. Rob, your thoughts? So Vadi really brought quite a bit to the table. Your thoughts, Rob?
Absolutely. Well, humans are the first computer and they are the first automation, right? And then we've gone from there. No, it's great stuff. The cobots things, that's a real deal. I know going back to building Lumada at Hitachi, instead of just talking about the Internet of Things, I was like, no, we're building the Internet of people and machines because they need to work together. And we're going to be working together for decades to come. My example of that I always like to use has to do with meter readers from a utility. A lot of people think, oh, we're going to have automatic meter readers, IoT meters sending data about how much electricity you're using. But the reality is you still sometimes have some guy jumping into your backyard to take a reading themselves. This is how every industry is going to be for the foreseeable future. And so it's important to build systems that work both ways. Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's machines and analytics. And then back to the other aspect of remote control, basically lights out factories, being able to remotely run a factory without being on the shop floor. If you have to shift supply chain and manufacturing to different locations around the globe, being able to sit there with your smartphone or your tablet and be able to monitor and control machines from across the world is powerful. And it helps with that whole labor issue as well, for sure.
That's right. And as we all know, it's been so many different sectors and industries are struggling with the labor, finding the right talent, finding more of the right talent. And speaking of that, this is where I'm going to segue, Priya and Vadi and Rob, because we're going to, as we start to talk about the digital divide, right? One of the ramifications from the digital divide is our younger folks not developing the skill sets that all these organizations need to take advantage of the things and opportunities that Priya and Vadi and Rob are all speaking to. And that's just one little element. So again, I want to call out the great nonprofit, Elevate Our Kids. Rob, you serve on the board for this great nonprofit that has a very noble mission of finding ways of bridging this digital divide. And thankfully, Priya, Vadi, Rob, because of our collaboration here today, we're all empowering and enabling a great donation being made to that nonprofit. So thank you for all that you do. Okay, so Rob, as we shift gears and talk about digital divide, that's a phrase that some people may not be familiar with. So help us by defining that a bit, would you?
Sure. To keep it really simple, a lot of it has to do with having broadband internet connectivity and a computer. Of course, that could be a PC or a tablet or a smartphone or some kind of compute device. But like so many things in life, what do we talk about? There's haves and have-nots in all kinds of things, in demographics and locations and ages and races and everything. And so there is that digital divide, because think about everything that's being discussed right now. How are we going to have a workforce of the future potentially that knows about all this digital stuff, right? We are people, just like we talk about in tech about moving up the stack, people have to move up the stack as well, and so you're not always going to have people on the shop floor doing manual labor. A high percentage of manufacturing actually is still just humans doing manual stuff, actually. And we're trying to get to this Industry 4.0 goal at some point in the future and this digitalization. But you aren't going to get there if we don't have the people to come with us. And it starts with kids, right? And so getting broadband all over, and so you released a good report from Purdue that just was great statistics, just showing around the United States by regions, urban versus rural, different age groups, all kinds of things to tell you where that divide is. It's important to bring everybody along with us. It's huge. And so, I think it's an imperative, and it's not just to help them be connected, and it's how we learn today, but It's also for those skills for the future.
Rob, that's a great level setting as we start talking about digital divide. And I also like your comment there. It's a global issue, right? In the States, elsewhere, you name it. Unfortunately, we're leaving folks behind from a variety of different walks of life and geographic region and demos, you name it. And by the way, I don't know if Catherine and Amanda can find it, but that there was a July 2022 report, data-driven report by the great folks over at Purdue University. If you can find that link that I dropped in LinkedIn today and drop it in the chat, that would be great, so folks can kind of study up on some of the trends there. All right, so Priya and Vadi, and let's reverse the order a bit. Vadi, I'm gonna start with you here. So when you think about the digital divide, I know both of y'all, Vadi and Priya, do a lot of work out in the community from a volunteering standpoint, you and your organizations, of course. But Vadi, when it comes to the digital divide, what are some of the needs that you're seeing out there in the communities?
Yeah, so Rob touched on the most important thing, which is really education to the kids around what technology can do, and how is it actually meaningfully going to add value to their lives, but also to the lives of other people in their communities. And Priya had earlier touched on what Deloitte and SAP are partnering on at the Smart Factory at Wichita. So we have built a real production line which produces smart rover kits. And these smart rover kits, the intent of that is to continue to drive STEM education. So these are rover kits that are distributed to kids in both the Wichita schools and also now in the Detroit area, but also in the rest of the country. And the whole point of this is to get kids excited about science and excited about technology. And one of the things that multiple studies have shown is if you look at girls that dive into STEM education, that number is much lower than where we want it to be. So how do we actually leverage things that we produce that are relatable to kids, that we can use that to create more excitement around it? Because as we continue to create that excitement at the schools, that will then percolate into society. And Rob, your point about just having broadband and internet connection is so critical. And then how do we take that to the next level by giving them toys that kids can play with, that allow them to explore the beauty, in my mind, of science and technology. I grew up that way, just learning a lot more about science, just playing with it. And I think it's very exciting that we can continue to do that, both in our immediate communities, but also in the country, but hopefully globally as well, as we continue to expand. So that's been a huge part of this focus at the Smart Factory, is not only do create some innovative ideas around manufacturing, innovative ideas around sustainability, but really use that output in a philanthropic manner to create the excitement around science and technology that is absolutely essential and needs to grow for this digital divide, to bridge that digital divide, I'd say.
Yeah, Vadi, lot of good stuff there. And by the way, Stephanie says elevateourkids.org. You can learn more about that nonprofit there. And she and the team thanks us. Hey, Stephanie, appreciate the work you are doing, really addressing a lot of what Vadi and Rob have already shared and what Priya is about to share, I bet. One quick comment, Priya, before I can come get your thoughts around some of the needs out there. I think an eye-opener for me, I don't know about y'all, is during the height of the pandemic, we opted to homeschool our children. And as I just observed all the different devices, the apps, all the bandwidth, by the way, we had to change our programming schedule, all of that it took. And then, of course, thinking of all the folks in a variety of communities and that didn't have access to that and didn't have the choices and the ability to learn wherever they were. We certainly have to got a lot of work to do. But Priya, when you think about the communities out there as it relates to digital divide, what are some of the other needs that you see?
Yeah, and you touched on an excellent point, Scott, right? COVID for sure highlighted this critical problem, which under-resourced communities have been challenged with for a very, very long time. And, my son is a volunteer tutor. And when lessons had to be delivered online, like you just mentioned, you could actually clearly see the communities which were hit the hardest, right, with lack of access to laptops, internet connection, and even here in Silicon Valley. And I also had a unique opportunity this year to work with SAP CFO Luka Music to launch a digital internship program for students in Burkina Faso Institute of Technology. So this is also known as BIT, located in Burkina Faso, Africa. And you talked about the digital divide, prevalent across communities in the US, but also across the world. Yeah. And working with BIT students was a great learning experience. There's still so much to be done to support these students who have limited resources. And we're talking about manufacturing. There are projections that by 2030, Africa's vast natural resources and with potential workforce, that Africa will be the world's next big manufacturing hub. Mm-hmm. But Africa is still far from being ready. Lots of work to be done across many areas: infrastructure, educational opportunities. And for us to create a sustainable world, we have to address this digital divide locally and globally for us to all move forward together. And And in that spirit, I think the Deloitte SAP partnership on the smart factory is a step in the right direction.
So true. So many opportunities. Rob, I'll get you to comment there on what you heard from Vadi and Priya to truly, I mean, not to sound cliche, because it is got that cliche feel, but not leaving anybody behind, right? We're already in the digital era, and we're only, to everyone's point here, only going to be moving and innovating even faster. So the opportunity to leave folks behind is going to be even greater. I was looking at, apart from the Purdue research piece that I posted earlier on LinkedIn, I was looking at some other data across the internet that was analyzing different skill sets of not just access, but how to, who knows how to do stuff on the internet. And I don't mean to put that in a joking manner, but let's face it, immediately I go to work comparing me and my kids and our ability to get stuff done. I don't know about you, Priya, Vadi, and Rob. My kids are doing circles around my understanding of all things digital. But Rob, with Vadi and Priya, as they identify some opportunities and some solutions out there, what are some of your thoughts?
The whole talk about STEM toys, do things that will get kids interested. Because you can't just throw stuff at them if they don't think it's cool or it's not interesting, they may not do it. When I think about working with kids, the first time I was probably doing it when I spent most of my career at Microsoft, this great guy, Hadi Partovi, he's the one who started code.org. And that was an internal thing at Microsoft. And then he asked if he could take it out there. And so anybody who's seen the Hour of Code, we had President Obama, we had everybody. And it started this whole thing where we showed kids just doing fun little games and stuff in their web browser to learn ultimately JavaScript and stuff like that. And it started as this kind of yearly thing where you go into schools and do that. Well, now, because there was all these revelations that found out lots of school districts and lots of states don't even have any kind of remote computer science, anything in their schools at all. And all this is happening, the kids that are getting ahead in computer science and things like that, it's because their parents are helping them get ahead, and they're doing it in tutors, they're going to other education outside of school. And so it's like, that's a part of the digital divide there. How do we help all the rest of the kids? Because too many schools say, well, we've got 6 or 7 periods a day, and we don't have time to put in a slot for yet another thing to teach them. And so stuff like code.org was a great start. And now it's something like is blossoming. You got to get them interested.
Agreed. And when you mentioned it's got to be cool and fun, I immediately went to my oldest. She gives some iconic eye rolls if it's not cool and fun. Rob, Priya, and Vadi. But I want to go back, and before we kind of come down the home stretch and make sure folks know how to connect with Priya and Vadi, and of course Rob, Vadi, I want to go back to what you were talking about, but really both Deloitte and SAP making those investments. Vadi, you mentioned the schools in Wichita and Detroit. It seems like that initiative you were referencing was approaching that one aspect that Rob mentioned, where the schools are limited with resources and ways to bridge the digital divide, right, Vadi?
Yeah. I think for us, it was about what's the best way for us to reach kids. We could absolutely go to individual, homes, but for us, it was about, if we can provide, better capabilities to schools. Schools are then going to provide those capabilities to kids, get them interested. And so we thought a great way to make this happen is to build those relationships really with the school networks across the country. And Wichita was natural because we had the Smart Factory in Wichita, and then we've started to really grow out from there to reach out to other school districts within the country to make that happen.
Yeah, man, I love that. I really do. Stepping up to the plate. That because it's our responsibility, right? All right, so Priya, that begs the question: when are we going to do this in Wichita next? How you got your calendar handy there, Priya?
Anytime. I mean, Vadi, let's get together and schedule this.
Let's do it.
We can have a party in Wichita, guys.
Vadi, yes, and you know what? We all can bring. Clearly, I'm dealing with 3 culinary maestros here. We can all bring dishes. We can invite friends and family. Maybe we even get the folks from Elevate Our Kids, the Smart Factory, you name it, and all do good while we enjoy each other's kindred spirits and camaraderie. Okay. So before we wrap here today, I want to make sure, Rob, I appreciate your volunteerism, by the way, and not just to elevate our kids, many other things you're up to. But what's the best way that our listeners can support the Elevate Our Kids mission?
All right. So Elevate Our Kids, to give you some backstory, kind of like we've discussed, it started at the beginning of COVID. We were all locked down. The kids had to go home from school. And what did we discover? Not all the kids had a laptop. And so we said, well, we're going to build a foundation and we're going to start raising money. We've given laptops to school districts. And so, whether it's PCs, Chromebooks, all kinds of things like that. What's the next thing we learn? Oh, turns out a lot of families don't even have internet access at their homes. So we worked with partners to get internet access. Sometimes you bring in kind of like the little hockey puck deal to bring in, Wi-Fi and LTE or something like that. So we worked hard with partners to do that. So it's about, initially it was a pain point, right? Kids got to learn. Kids, all of a sudden, our whole society went home and had to learn how to go to school at home. And so that was the mission. And it turns out it's the same kind of mission for a broader digital divide. So to help us out, go to elevateourkids.org is the website. You can read about us there. There's a place to donate. I'd say about right around $300 donation equips one kid with the laptop and internet access that they need to get online and be taught. It was my wife's a school teacher, and so I saw it firsthand. She was teaching school in one of our bedrooms on Teams and Zoom and all that kind of stuff that we've all gotten used to. And so it made it really real for me. And we saw firsthand, in the past, there was this notion of one-to-one. Some school districts, wealthier school districts, were able to give laptops or iPads, tablets to kids, but not all things are equal, as we know, unfortunately. And so you had lots of school districts that just couldn't afford, didn't have the money to do that. And so, and even as Priya said, even like in places like Silicon Valley or places that you think everybody's got it, there's pockets of poverty and of under-resourced communities everywhere. Yep. And so there's a lot of work to do, and you can't just sit back on autopilot and think someone else is going to do it. If that's how you live your life, things don't get done. It's like being in a startup. If you want to get it done, you're going to have to do it. And so that's kind of how we feel about Elevate Our Kids.
Rob, I love that. I'm so glad that we could get together with Priya and Vadi and you and talk about what's going on in the industry, right? In a way that any business leader can appreciate, but also talk about purpose, right? And there's noble missions out there to attack one of the greatest issues of our time right now. Okay, so let's do this. Priya, would love, I know you're out there doing business with the movers and shakers. Really appreciate you carving some time out here today. How can folks connect with you if they don't join our party in Wichita? And as Usman says, we'll bring some cheese. Yes, we're going to hold you to that, Usman. So Priya, if they can't join our get together in Wichita, maybe next year, how can they connect with you and the SAP team?
Very easy. I very easy connect via LinkedIn, and I would love to connect with all of you on the show today.
Wonderful. That just makes it so easy. I wish I had thought of LinkedIn. Business is good at LinkedIn right now. Hey, and we dropped Priya's profile right there. You're one click away from connecting, and maybe you can find a way to support some of the initiatives they're doing out in the industry, such as creating those the internships you mentioned that really addresses STEM and digital divide and whatnot. So Priya, really appreciate your time here today. Vadi, same question. How can folks connect with you and all the great things you're doing over with Team Deloitte?
Exactly, really the same answer as Priya. I mean, LinkedIn is a fabulous way you can reach out to me directly. There's also a lot of good information, obviously, on the Deloitte page itself around manufacturing and sustainability, and I can connect anyone that's interested with other leaders as well in this space. So more than happy to make that connection.
Outstanding. And what neither Priya nor Vadi shared, Rob, but my hunch is also exchange recipes. I'm hoping they'll give up some of their best recipes. Priya, that
Absolutely.
might take, we might have to bargain with you and buy you off maybe. I don't know, to get some of your recipes maybe, huh?
Absolutely.
Well, a pleasure, a real pleasure with you both. Priya Wenzel with SAP and Vadi Narasimha-Murthy with Deloitte. Thank you, Priya.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Rob.
Had
Great
a
to be here.
blast. And thank you, Vadi. Have a great, great rest of your day.
Thank you very much for this. This is fantastic.
All righty. Thank you. All right, Rob. Man, Vadi
Wow.
and Priya. How about that for a 1-2 punch?
They know their
I mean,
stuff. I filled up 4 pages in my notebook.
Well, I
Lots
knew
of
it was going to
valuable
be
insights.
well, and you know, clearly they're involved in powering industry forward. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite things to talk about with all the movers and shakers out there like you is what do you do? It's great, you know, right? All the great work you're doing, business you're doing, but man, what are you doing on the purpose side? And clearly, all three of y'all have really rolled up your sleeves and you know, embrace that do good aspect that the greatest leaders have. So, Rob, that's enough from me, though. That's some of my favorite points that were brought up here today, plus all the food. Man, that front end, Vadi and Priya both. But what are some of your one of your favorite thoughts or two from today's conversation?
Gosh, the you know, the disruption continues. I like the notion of companies needing to learn to become more resilient. And the supply chain is longer than the average person realizes. It stretches through lots of different parts. A lot of people think, oh, the supply chain is just trucks or boats. It's manufacturing, it's raw materials coming in, it's all kinds of things. And so what, you know, the takeaway is maybe we'll carry more inventory and have more of a buffer. Will that cost more money for manufacturers, for companies? Yeah, it will. But they're already shifting to having to do that because their customers are not happy, right?
Mm.
The other thing is, and this is a stretch, do you notice how tech or dishwashers or refrigerators or lots of things, and I'm just totally generalizing here. Do you notice how there's no repair shops anymore to fix things? People just like, oh, it's broke. I guess I need a new one. Oh,
Right.
it's going to take 6 weeks to get a new one because of the supply chain. Maybe there's an opportunity to bring back people who know how to fix things again.
Oh,
You
I
know,
love
because
that.
if you could fix broken things, you don't have to keep replacing them. And I think fixing goes hand in hand with sustainability too, doesn't it?
Mm.
Remaining useful life. Let's
Mm.
extend the useful life of these items that we all buy instead of getting them into a landfill and feeling the need to get a new one.
Well, Rob, speaking perfect illustration because I know you're a big music fan. Records are
Yeah,
back. Records, right? The good old LP, they're
yes,
back. Who knows?
it's right
Maybe
behind me. There's the turntable right there.
Right. So,
Absolutely. I used to be a disc jockey. Yeah.
well, and we're going to dive into that on the next episode. But you know, to your point, maybe vintage dishwashers and refrigerators and appliances, including the folks with the skill sets to fix them, are going to be back in. We'll see. But regardless, Rob, Tiffany, really enjoyed the conversation today. You know, we knew it was going to be a good one pre-show, but really appreciate how it all came together. Stephanie mentions, you know, back to Elevate Our Kids. Hey, y'all can participate in the December donation drive, of course, here in the States. This is not accounting advice. If y'all saw my accounting grades in college, you know how much you could appreciate that. But there may be some tax value by making a donation here, right here at the end of the year. But Rob, how can folks connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Is that controversial to say that now? And rob.tiffany at sustainablelogics.com, building a startup to use all this tech for a bigger purpose around sustainability. And so it's people need purpose, you know, and when what you're doing for a living aligns with a purpose, it's like you're not working, right? It's all
comes
good.
together. Yeah, all comes together.
Absolutely.
Rob, Tiffany, I really appreciate all that you do out there in the industry. And of course, a fellow veteran I alluded to earlier. Man, veterans, the uniform comes off, the service doesn't stop, and appreciate what
That's
you
right.
do, Rob, Tiffany.
I
To
appreciate
all of our listeners out there, hey, man, one heck of a conversation between Vadi, Priya, and Rob here. Thanks for I know we couldn't get to all the comments, We'll see if our panel can't get back to there, maybe engage in some of the questions we got. But regardless, hey, you heard a lot of good, actionable insights here from Rob, Vadi, and Priya. But the onus is on you. Hey, deeds, not words. Take action. Hope you enjoyed the episode. On behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change. Be like Rob, Vadi, and Priya, and the world's going to be a better place. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.